There's a moment in everyone's life when the noise of the world gets too loud. Voices telling you what's right, what's smart, what's acceptable. And somewhere inside all that noise, your own voice gets quieter and quieter until you barely recognize it. That's when the words of Angelina Jolie hit different. No one has the right to tell you who to be. Only you can decide how to live your life. Simple words, right? But they come from someone who's actually lived them. When Angelina was young, the world already thought it knew who she was supposed to be. The daughter of an Oscar-winning actor, the Hollywood wild child, the beauty with the tattoos and the mystery. People labeled her before she even had the chance to define herself. But here's the thing. She didn't let those labels stick. She kept evolving. She kept questioning. She kept deciding. And that's the heart of this story. The courage to decide for yourself, again and again, no matter what the world expects. Because that's what freedom really is. Not doing whatever you want, but having the strength to listen to your own truth, even when it doesn't make sense to anyone else. Think about it. When was the last time you made a decision that was purely yours? Not because it was the logical choice, not because it made someone proud, but because deep down, it felt right. That's what Angelina's talking about. You can see it in the way she's lived. At 22, she was already winning Oscars. The world wanted her to be Hollywood's next glamorous star, but she didn't stay in that box. She adopted her first son from Cambodia, started visiting war zones, and turned her fame into a tool for something bigger. People didn't get it at first. They called her strange, dramatic, unpredictable. But she wasn't trying to please anyone. She was trying to live a life that meant something to her, and maybe that's the hardest lesson of all, to stop performing the version of yourself that other people prefer. Imagine being told every day what you should be: quieter, prettier, safer, smaller. Now imagine saying, no, I get to decide. That's the spark we're talking about. That's the fire this story is built on. It's not just about fame or rebellion or breaking rules. It's about claiming the right to exist as yourself, fully, unapologetically, even when it's messy. Because the truth is, nobody can live your life but you. Not your parents, not your partner, not your boss, not the internet. And every time you let someone else define your worth, you hand over a piece of your freedom. Angelina once said that she used to feel lost, like she didn't fit anywhere. But the more she traveled, the more she saw pain, beauty, injustice, hope. The more she understood who she was. Not a Hollywood figure, not a rebel, not a headline. A human being trying to make a difference in a world that desperately needs compassion. And maybe that's the point. We find ourselves not by fitting in, but by breaking out. This isn't just Angelina's story. It's everyone's story. Because sooner or later, life will hand you a choice. Be what they expect, or be who you are. And in that moment, you'll feel the same tension she felt, between comfort and authenticity, between approval and truth. So let this be the beginning of remembering that you are the author of your own story, that the chapters haven't been written yet, that you get to choose the tone, the characters, the ending. Maybe you've been living on autopilot. Maybe you've been quieting your own dreams because someone said they were unrealistic. Maybe you've been trying to be liked more than you've been trying to be honest. But that can change, right now. All it takes is one thought, one whisper. Only I can decide how to live my life. That's where we start. The thing about finding yourself is that it doesn't happen all at once. It's not a lightning strike. It's more like a slow unfolding, a series of quiet moments when you start realizing who you are and who you're not. Angelina Jolie didn't just wake up one day and know exactly who she wanted to be. In her early 20s, she was famous, beautiful, successful. Everything people said they wanted, but she wasn't at peace. She once admitted she felt empty, even while the world was applauding her. That's something most of us can relate to. You do everything you're supposed to do. Get the degree, get the job, get the approval. But somehow, it doesn't fill the space inside. So she began asking bigger questions. Who am I without all this? What do I actually care about? What does my life stand for? And those questions changed everything. When she adopted her first child, Maddox, from Cambodia, the world said, she's crazy. When she became a UN ambassador and started walking through refugee camps instead of red carpets, they said, She's unpredictable. But to her, it finally made sense. She wasn't running from her life. She was running toward it. Because that's what happens when you stop listening to everyone else's version of you. You start hearing your real voice again. The one that says, I want to live a life that matters to me. She didn't need permission. She didn't wait for someone to say, now you're ready. She just started doing what felt right. And maybe that's where most people get stuck. Waiting for permission. Waiting for a sign, a validation, a moment when everything feels safe. But that moment never really comes. The truth is, you become yourself by risking being misunderstood, by doing what others might not get, by stepping into spaces that scare you, because they're the ones that will grow you. Angelina once said that when she first went into humanitarian work, she was nervous. She didn't know how to act or what to say. But the more time she spent with people in refugee camps, mothers, children, survivors, the more she saw what really mattered. She said, I realized how lucky I was, and how connected we all are. That realization became the backbone of her life. You can see it in the choices she made later, her films about justice and courage, her advocacy for women's rights, her openness about her health and her struggles. Each decision came from a place of honesty, not image. And that's the shift that happens when you start living for real. You stop trying to impress, and you start trying to express. Maybe that's what growing up really is, not becoming what others want, but becoming who you already are underneath all their expectations. Think about how many people live inside cages built from approval. The cage might look different for everyone. Some people call it success, some call it duty, some call it love. But if it keeps you from being yourself, it's still a cage. And one day, you have to ask the hardest question of all. If I took away all the roles, all the titles, all the labels, who would I be? For Angelina, the answer came slowly. Through experience, mistakes, heartbreak, and purpose. She became more than an actress. She became a storyteller, a mother, a humanitarian, a voice for the voiceless. Not because the world told her to, but because she chose to. And that's the lesson we can all carry. Becoming yourself isn't about changing who you are. It's about peeling back the layers of who you're not. So maybe today's not about reinventing yourself. Maybe it's about remembering yourself. The child who used to dream before fear set in. The teenager who believed she could change something. The adult who still feels that quiet spark inside, even under the weight of expectations. Angelina once said, different is good. When someone tells you that you are different, smile, hold your head up high, and be proud. That's not arrogance, that's freedom. Because being different just means you're finally being you. And when you start to own that, the world might resist at first, but eventually it adjusts to your truth. So if you ever find yourself doubting, remember her journey. From the misunderstood actress to the UN envoy. From the rebel to the role model. From someone searching for meaning to someone creating it. That's what it looks like to become yourself. Not perfect, not polished, just real. Change sounds beautiful when you say it out loud, but living it, that's something else. It's uncomfortable. It's lonely, it's messy, and yet, it's the only way to grow into the person you're meant to be. Angelina Jolie didn't find her strength in the spotlight. She found it in the dark, in the moments when she had to face herself. There were times when the world watched her every move, waiting for her to fail, waiting to label her again. But she didn't let their expectations define her story. She just kept changing. She once said, make bold choices and make mistakes. It's all those things that add up to the person you become. That's what courage really is. Not the absence of fear, but the willingness to walk through it. And she walked through plenty. Public breakups, health battles, family pain, constant criticism. Any one of those could have broken her spirit. But instead, she used every hardship as a lesson. She learned that real power isn't loud. It's steady. It's the quiet kind of strength that comes from knowing who you are, even when the world doesn't. There's this moment that people still talk about, when she decided to undergo a preventative double mastectomy. She wrote about it publicly, not to shock anyone, but to help other women understand they had choices. She turned a deeply personal decision into a message of empowerment. That's courage, not pretending to be fearless, but choosing to live openly, honestly, even when it's scary. Because when you decide how to live your life, not everyone's going to cheer you on. Some people will misunderstand you, some will judge you, some will even walk away. But that's okay. Not everyone is meant to stay in every chapter of your story. Angelina once said that when she started traveling to war zones as a UN ambassador, she saw things that changed her forever. The resilience of people who had lost everything. The grace of children who smiled through chaos. It shifted her perspective completely. She said, "I realize that the world is bigger than me, and that's freeing." When you stop living for approval and start living with purpose, you find a kind of peace that's deeper than happiness. It's not about what the world thinks of you anymore. It's about what you think of you. And that's not an easy road. You'll doubt yourself. You'll question if you made the right choice. You'll miss the comfort of old patterns. But every time you choose your truth over someone else's expectations, you become braver. Think about it. We admire people like Angelina, not just for their talent, but for their choices, for their willingness to evolve, to step out of the frame and live their own story. That's what courage looks like. It's the moment you say, "I'm done living on other people's terms." It's quitting a job that drains you, even when everyone says it's safe. It's leaving a relationship that no longer fits, even if it once did. It's speaking up for something you believe in, even when your voice shakes. That's what it means to live freely, to stop apologizing for being yourself. Because here's the truth. People will talk either way. If you fail, they'll talk. If you succeed, they'll still talk. So you might as well live a life that feels honest to you. Angelina learned that early. She stopped trying to be the image people wanted and started being the woman she respected. Strong, imperfect, passionate, compassionate. And she kept changing, not to escape who she was, but to grow into who she could be. She once said, "I am still at heart, and always will be, just a punk kid with tattoos." That's her way of saying, "I haven't lost myself, I've just expanded." And that's what courage does. It doesn't erase your past, it integrates it. It turns your pain into wisdom, your mistakes into strength, your vulnerability into connection. So if you're in that space right now, standing at the edge of change, afraid to take the leap, remember this: the fear won't disappear, but neither will your calling, and one of them has to win. Every great transformation starts with a single decision, to stop asking for permission to be yourself. So ask yourself, what part of your life are you still living for someone else? What dream have you been silencing because you're scared of what people might say? And then, remember Angelina's words. No one has the right to tell you who to be. Say them out loud. Whisper them if you have to. Because sometimes, the most radical act of courage is to simply decide for yourself. People usually think strength means never breaking, never crying, never showing fear. But Angelina Jolie showed the world something different. That real strength isn't about how much you can hide. It's about how deeply you can feel. For her, vulnerability wasn't a weakness. It was a doorway to connection, to empathy, to truth. When she became a mother, her world changed completely. She often says her kids taught her how to love without conditions, how to slow down, how to care in ways that fame could never teach. She traveled with them, lived across cultures, built a family that didn't fit any mold. And people had opinions. Of course they did. Too many kids, too unconventional, too complicated. But that's the thing. She never cared about fitting anyone's definition of normal. She built a home that reflected her values, not the headlines. That's what vulnerability really looks like, living by your heart, even when people don't understand it. Angelina once said, "When I first became a mother, my entire life changed. Having children saved me, and taught me to be in the world differently." You can feel how honest that is. She didn't say it made her perfect. She said it made her present. That's what strength through vulnerability does. It grounds you. It takes you out of the performance of life and drops you into the real thing. And that lesson applies to all of us, because we live in a world that tells us to be tough, to have it together, to never let anyone see the cracks. But those cracks, they're where the light gets in. They're what make us human. Angelina didn't hide her scars, literal or emotional. She talked openly about her surgeries, about her health, about the fears that came with them. And by doing that, she gave other women permission to talk about theirs. That's leadership. Not through perfection, but through honesty. She once wrote, "Life comes with many challenges. The ones that should not scare us are the ones we can take on and take control of." That's what she did. Turned pain into power, fear into choice. And when you think about it, that's the deepest meaning behind her quote. No one has the right to tell you who to be, because people will tell you to be tough, to smile, to stay quiet, to move on. But sometimes, being who you are means saying, no, I'm hurting. No, I need time. No, I want more. It takes strength to say that. It takes strength to be soft in a world that worships hardness. Angelina's humanitarian work has always been rooted in that same softness, that ability to sit with people's pain, to listen, to really see them. She's met women who lost everything and still found ways to smile. She's spoken to children who have seen war and still dream of peace. She once said, I don't know why some people have to live in fear and others are born free. But I know that when you see injustice, you can't turn away. That's empathy turned into action. And it's born from the courage to feel. Because when you allow yourself to feel, really feel, it's impossible to stay indifferent. You start to care. You start to want better. And that's how the world changes, one open heart at a time. So maybe the strongest people aren't the ones who never fall apart. Maybe they're the ones who choose to rebuild, piece by piece, with love still intact. Angelina once said that when she talks to her kids about courage, she tells them it's not about fighting. It's about standing up for someone else, even when it's hard. That's a different kind of bravery. The quiet kind. The real kind. And that kind of courage starts with being honest about who you are. Your pain, your joy, your flaws, your fire. When you own those things, no one can use them against you. They become your power. So if you've ever been told to toughen up, to hide your emotions, to keep it together, maybe it's time to unlearn that. Maybe it's time to see that being open, being real, being human. That's strength. Because every time you let yourself be seen, you give someone else permission to do the same. And that's how movements start. Not with noise, but with truth. So when Angelina says, only you can decide how to live your life, she's not talking about control. She's talking about ownership, owning your choices, owning your emotions, owning your story, and understanding that your softness, your compassion, your honesty, they're not weaknesses to hide. They're your superpowers. At some point, every story circles back to its beginning. You spend years trying to become what the world expects, and then one day you realize the only story worth living is the one you write yourself. That's the lesson Angelina Jolie has been living all along. Not a perfect life, not an easy one, but an honest one. She said before that she doesn't believe in chasing happiness. She believes in chasing meaning, and meaning, she's learned, comes from truth. Think about her journey. The world saw the actress, the beauty, the controversy, but underneath all that, there was a seeker, someone who wanted to understand what it means to live with purpose. She kept changing, but not for the camera, for herself. She grew from a restless young woman into a mother, a director, a humanitarian, a voice for the silenced. And through all of it, she stayed loyal to that one simple idea. Only you can decide how to live your life. It's not just a quote, it's a compass, because there's always going to be pressure, to look a certain way, to live a certain script, to choose the safer road. But you don't have to follow it. You can pause, you can listen, you can ask, what do I really want my life to stand for? When Angelina started directing, people doubted her. When she began speaking on global issues, they questioned her motives. When she opened her home to children from different countries and backgrounds, they criticized her choices. But she didn't argue. She kept moving, kept doing, kept creating. Because when you know who you are, you don't need to convince anyone else. That's the freedom she's talking about. Not rebellion for rebellion's sake, but the deep, grounded kind of freedom that comes from self-respect. You can see it in the way she carries herself now. There's no rush to prove anything, no need to explain, just presence, purpose, peace. And that's what happens when you take control of your story. You stop living reactively, always responding to other people's expectations, and start living intentionally. Angelina once said, "We have a responsibility to help each other. Human beings are connected." That's the other side of the message. When you live authentically, you naturally start lifting others. Because when you choose to be yourself, you give permission for others to do the same. It's contagious, that kind of courage. So maybe this is where you start. Not by tearing your life apart, but by asking one honest question. Am I living the story I want to tell? If the answer is no, good. That means you're awake. It means you still have time to change the ending. Angelina's story reminds us that reinvention isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've been all along, before the noise, before the fear, before the world told you who to be. She found her truth in places far from Hollywood, in refugee camps, in conversations with survivors, in the laughter of her children. Those experiences stripped away everything that wasn't real. And maybe that's the secret. To live fully, you have to let go of what's fake. Let go of the idea that your worth depends on approval. Let go of the script that someone else wrote for you. Let go of the fear that being different makes you wrong. Because the moment you decide your own direction, you begin to live with intention. That's when life becomes art. Not perfect, not predictable, but honest, raw, alive. So take a breath. Picture your life as a blank page. All the things people said about you, tear them out. All the expectations that never felt right, let them go. Now start writing. Maybe your story will be quiet. Maybe it'll be loud. Maybe it'll be messy and full of turns you didn't expect. But as long as it's yours, truly yours, it will be beautiful. Because that's what Angelina's message is really about. Not fame, not image, not success. It's about authenticity. It's about choosing honesty over perfection, compassion over convenience, courage over comfort. And it's about remembering that every single day you have a choice, to repeat the old story or to write a new one. So, what will your story be? Will it be the story they told you to live? The safe one? The small one? The one that looks right from the outside? Or will it be the story that scares you a little, but feels true in your bones? Because that's the story worth telling. That's the life worth living. When you live that way, something incredible happens. You stop chasing happiness, and you start feeling peace. You stop trying to fit in, and you start belonging to yourself. You stop following, and you start leading, even quietly, by example. That's what Angelina Jolie did, and that's what her words invite you to do. So here, at the end, let's come back to where we began. All the noise, all the opinions, all the voices that try to shape you, let them fade. And in the silence that's left, listen for your own. It's been there the whole time, waiting for you to hear it. And when you do, you'll understand the truth behind her words. No one has the right to tell you who to be. Only you can decide how to live your life. And that decision, that moment of choice, is where your real story begins.